At Great Plains, that was the name of our company, we coined this word systow to give metaphors to what Deming stood for and to move into ways of understanding it. And the time paradigm is our way of understanding variation. So here we're going to go. Start out real quick, just kind of set the groundwork. We talked about the conflict that all the companies have. And we have these three circles. I'm not going to go to double time again, but which one are we standing in? In other words, which circle do you pay allegiance to? And a lot of people try to be in all three, and that's kind of difficult. So in a typical command and control structure, we tend to stay in the company circle. And it's all about financial goals and management by objectives and all those things that Deming does not believe in. Then there was always the Boston Consulting Group and people like that came along and said, no. What you need to do is beat the competition, get a competitive advantage, and exploit everything out there. And that's what it's all about. So that became another focus. And it's pretty common, that's what's taught in business school, is to beat the competition and make money for the shareholders. And that's kind of the way it works, and it's all set up in a command and control type structure. The customer circle kind of gets forgotten, but it's always considered to be important, and the workers are down there frustrated with, how do I do all this stuff? Which circle am I supposed to be in? So the wisdom of current traditions throws a couple more boxes on the pyramid and tells people to be productive, and if you are productive, you'll get those financial goals. And go ahead and take care of the customer, because if you do that, you can make your market goals. The customer is dead last in the example, and it's very frustrating because it kind of tells you to answer the phone with a robot and get off the phone as fast as you can and exploit the customer. Exploit the competition, which is something the customer doesn't like. The customer usually considers the competition, our competition, another one of his suppliers. So we've set up a three-ring circus here that is very, very paradoxical and frustrating. I call it the vision paradox, because are these results really a reality? We say the results are realities in the results, but we've set up a situation where it's impossible. So we switch over to something we call the process control environment. And this is what we call our Kaizen model for continuous improvement. But really, we think of it as a molecule. It's a living system. And here's where some of the words start to come to life, because we, all the way through, have metaphors that take the place of the jargon that Deming created. And I don't mean jargon in a negative way, but I do mean it in such an academic way that no one understands it. So we started to try to bring it to life, and in our organization chart, it becomes this living molecule. There's nobody in the thing except customers. The customer circle is the only focus. And we talked about systow, the name of the book, and the SYS stands for systems thinking. It is the blue boxes. And the TAO is intentionally there to conjure up ideas of Eastern flow and Taoism, if you will. It's the green arrows. And systems thinking is the blue boxes. Understanding relationships, Deming would call it psychology, is the green arrows. And we're saying that it's the relationships that make this thing work. Another way to think about systow is to call it staple yourself to an order. If you were to staple yourself to an order, you'd go from one blue box to the next, and you would follow the flow of the operation or the process, and you'd start to realize that you don't work for a boss, you work for the next blue box. So this is kind of the overarching metaphor that sets the stage for the time paradigm and the whole idea of systow. If you look at that molecule, you can see that across the bottom is stuff flowing, goods and services, and across the top is information flowing. And it's a continuous cycle, and it's kind of fractal-like, because you can drill down into that model and get more little Kaizen molecules, or you can back away from it and you can get the universe. So everything is kind of like that. And it's all about flow, and so the question becomes what causes it to flow or what inhibits it from flowing. And that's where understanding variation comes in, and that's where the time paradigm comes in. And if you think about it, we've already covered 3 of Deming's 4 pillars. In other words, systems thinking, understanding psychology, and understanding variation. Theory of knowledge I'm not talking about right now. So regarding understanding variation, what we're saying is that all the way around this wheel or this cycle is, in this case, time, but it could be anything. And what flows from one blue box to the next is always varying. And when we reduce the variation, we increase the flow, we increase the capability of the process to flow, and we take waste out of the system. And it's in no way focusing on cost. Although it's reducing waste, which is a form of cost, and it's increasing capability, which is a form of cost. But it's not focusing on cost per se. That's just a graphic showing that we're taking waste out, putting capability in, focused on the customer, and the idea of getting flow through the process. So the question becomes, how do you decrease that variation? Because if you do that and you focus on the customer, you're on your way. I should maybe pause. If there's any questions, please butt in, but I'm going to keep trucking at this rate so we can kind of get into the meat of this thing. Like I say, feel free to interject anything. Now, here's just a little compare and contrast the difference in a command and control structure and a process control environment. The first is just a picture. It's very clear that they're very different. One's focused on the company circle, one's focused on the customer circle, and there's a big difference in this focus in that it has to do with who you work for. In the process control environment, we're working for our customer, who may be internal in the next blue box, and he may be external as a whole other organization. And the opposite is true in the company circle, where you're working for your boss. The one is dealing with extrinsic motivation, not exclusively, but more so, the should-bes, we call it, and very objective goals. Some of them are listed there. On the other hand, the process control is more what could be. It's way more intrinsic, and it deals with aims, which are more subjective, and it's focused on quality, consciousness, continual improvement, and again, reducing waste, increasing capability. So it's a very, very different point of view. It's a way more right brain, way less left brain, but both I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm just saying that the process control environment is taking us in a direction that is very different from the traditional command and control. And I think the real answer is a little bit of both, but because we are so skewed to the right, or the command and control, I should say, which I think I should have said so skewed to the left brain, but the process control would be more of a balance if we could draw more of that into our organizations.
Hey Bob,
another graphic.
Quick question.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, you bet.
If we're saying, could you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. Oh, if we're saying that the sort of the command and control, management by objectives, would you say that's looking at more tangible? I guess the goals are more tangible, whereas the aims are more focused on the intangible?
Yes, the aims are more focused on the process, is what I would say. And the process I don't like the word intangible, but yes, I agree with what you're saying. It's nothing you can touch and feel, so to that extent it is intangible, but it's reality is in the process is what I'm saying, not the results.
Okay.
But you're right. You said it well.
Yeah, I just bring that up because it kind of makes me realize that a lot of times people say there's something wrong with that, it has to be tangible. We have to get these types of goals that you have in the lower left, and if we don't have that, then there's something wrong. And what I get from what your point is that there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. That's good.
Well, I'm just saying that if I had my druthers, I would play down what's on the objective company goals, and I would tee up what's on the other side.
Right.
You've got to have some of it. You got to have some of the other. Again, I think a lot of this is neurologically left brain, right brain stuff, and it takes a whole brain to operate. But we are so focused on this one side, if I can use that metaphor, that we're missing too much on the other side. Way too much. At any rate, that's a huge subject. This we're talking about.
Well, may I comment on that? This is Hans.
Yeah.
I think the way to explain it is looking at it from a cause and effect relationship. The results are caused by process. So if you have a better process, you're most likely to get better results. And it's very frustrating when you see people focusing on results and then trying to find out how they can improve the results. Well, if you are completely focused on results, the only way that you can improve them is by cooking the books.
Yeah.
And so because they don't understand the process, they are kind of frustrated and don't know what to do. And so the way to improve it is to go back to the process.
Right. I agree with that. I don't want to go off on a tangent now. I'd love to do it, but I don't want to take the time. But the word cause and effect becomes a little bit of an issue because it is such a reductionist, deterministic point of view. Really, so when you get deep into this, I think you realize that everything is relationships, and it's very difficult to say what is the cause and what is the effect. You get into all kinds of things where it's just not so simple as to say this caused that. And there's so many variables moving, but the relationships are what's really driving it. It's hard to say what's the cause and what's the effect, but the results are just that. They're just what's left over after you manage the process. So the process is very much a dialogue. Anyway, let me go on. So there's these 2 points of view. If you're in the company circle, you're pretty much like the word supply chain. It feels good to you, and you like the idea of accomplishing those goals. If you're in the customer circle, you're very much in what I'm going to call the demand chain. You're looking the other way, and you're trying to solve problems, and everybody's problem is unique. And it becomes subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder whose problem you're trying to solve. And that starts the dialogue down the road of saying, what is the cause, what is the effect? All you can do is improve the process and be so good at the process that no matter what the customer wants, your process will take care of him. But it's hard to say what your goals are. It's what his problems are, or hers. So when you're in the company circle, words like cost to serve, what's it cost to deliver, what's it cost to answer the phone, what's it cost, and it's local optimums, how much is our department contributing to the overall. It's much different than when you have a quality consciousness point of view and a holistic one at that, where you're trying to provide service and not worry about these things in the red.